TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stresses that Israel is fighting America's enemies overseas. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stresses that President Trump's plan for Gaza is not meant as a hostile move. The Palestinian Authority rejects President Trump's plan for Gaza, stressing that nothing will happen in the Gaza Strip without the PLO's explicit approval. An international uproar over President Donald Trump's plan to rehabilitate the Gaza Strip has unveiled the lack of genuine intentions vis-à-vis Palestinians living in the devastated enclave. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, during a meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the Department of Defense, reiterated initially Washington's ironclad commitment to Jerusalem, while stressing further that the United States is committed to achieving peace through strength.
Under President Trump's leadership, just like you, we are totally committed to achieving peace through strength, through standing with Israel on our side, putting America first, and never backing down from anything. It has been and will continue to be an unbreakable bond between our countries. You have a long memory, we have a long memory, and may our relationship continue to endure. We're going to continue to grow our defense industrial base. We've supplied munitions that were previously not supplied, that are useful in eradicating radical enemies, and we are committed to continuing to do so.
With our alliance, with your support, including the decision you just mentioned of supplying Israel the much-needed tools for our defense, we are a lot stronger than we've ever been.
It is worth noting that Jerusalem's defense spending prior to the Seventh Front War, which the Islamic Republic of Iran and its regional proxies launched on October 7th of 2023, stood at 5.3% of Israel's gross domestic product, or GDP. And while the United States provides Israel with annual stipends worth $3.3 billion with which the Israeli Defense Ministry can exclusively procure U.S. military goods, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed Israel's keen interest to increase defense procurements from the United States, while pointing out that Israel is essentially fighting America's enemies overseas.
I truly believe Israel obviously has no greater friend than the United States, and I think the United States has no better friend than Israel. It's an ally that perhaps is different from many of your allies because we have no compunction about fighting our enemies by ourselves. We're willing to shoulder the burden of our defense, but by confronting the forces of radicalism and terror and the forces that are anti-American at their core. They call you the great Satan and they call us the small Satan. We just stand in their way, but you are their great enemy. By confronting these various enemies, we're not only defeating those who wish to attack us, but those who wish to attack you as well. And therefore, our victory is your victory.
Defense Secretary Hegseth also seized the opportunity to address President Trump's vision for Gaza, which seemingly shook global conventions, rattling predominantly progressive, totalitarian, and Marxist governments and institutions globally.
I would just say to the question of Gaza, the definition of insanity is attempting to do the same thing over and over and over again. And as the President and Prime Minister pointed out last night, the President is willing to think outside the box, look for new and unique, dynamic ways to solve problems that have felt like they're intractable. So we look forward to more conversations about that, creative solutions to that, and as the man tasked with leading the Defense Department here, we're prepared to look at all options, as we've said before.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio sought to explain President Donald Trump's grand plan for the Gaza Strip, which he dubbed a very generous offer.
An acknowledgement of the following. Gaza has been severely damaged. If you look at the aerial imagery, you see what's happening. The billions of dollars that are going to be required for reconstruction are enormous. Some areas have been rendered unlivable now and for the foreseeable future. And so what President Trump announced yesterday is the offer, the willingness of the United States to become responsible for the reconstruction of that area. And while you are rebuilding, while you're clearing debris, by the way, there are unexploded munitions. There are all kinds of Hamas weaponry still buried underground. For people to be able to live in a place safely, all of that has to be removed. It's an enormous undertaking. And the only thing President Trump has done very generously, in my view, is offer the United States willingness to step in, clear the debris, clean the place up from all the destruction that's on the ground, clean it up of all these unexploded munitions. And in the meantime, the people living there will not be able, the people who call that home will not be able to live there while you have crews coming in and removing debris, while you have munitions being removed, etc. That's the offer that he's made. It's actually, he made a similar, obviously we didn't have a conflict at the time, but when in his first term, he offered a $50 billion plan to help Palestinians, which was rejected by the PA and obviously others. So in the interim, obviously people are going to have to live somewhere while you're rebuilding it. It is akin to a natural disaster.
Washington's top diplomat continued by stressing that Trump's plan was not meant as a hostile move.
So what he's very generously has offered is the ability of the United States to go in and help with debris removal, help with munitions removal, help with reconstruction, the rebuilding homes and businesses and things of this nature, so that then people can move back in. But in the meantime, they'll have to live somewhere. Now, the details of that, if it was accepted, would have to be worked out among multiple partner nations. It's a unique offer, one that no other country in the world has stepped up and made an offer. But I think it's one people need to think about. Seriously, it was not meant as a hostile move. It was meant as I think, a very generous move, the offer to rebuild and to be in charge of the rebuilding of a place, many parts of which right now, even if people move back, they would have nowhere to live safely because there are still unexploded munitions and debris and rubble.
Meanwhile, at the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to a question on whether the United States intends to deploy troops to the Gaza Strip for the purpose of realizing the presidential plan.
The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. And let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region.
It is important to know that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in an interview on Fox News channel's Hannity, emphasized that Israel will utilize its own forces to further President Donald Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip, and Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has already instructed the IDF to prepare contingencies for the purpose of assisting the Gazan population that is keen on leaving the terror-ridden enclave. Separately, Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas traveled to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, where he met with King Abdullah II to discuss the ramification of President Donald Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip. In parallel, President Abbas's spokesman, Nabil Abu Rudaina, expressed the Palestinian Authority's outright rejection of any plan that would displace the Palestinian population from the Gaza Strip.
The President and the Palestinian people had already rejected fully and completely these demands. This land is a Palestinian land. It's the international law. It's the Arab Peace Initiative. We refuse any kind of transfer for the Palestinian people, and we appreciate the position of the Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan concerning this issue. We are against any occupation, whether Israeli occupation or American occupation, to the Palestinian land. We are living in our country, in our state, in our land, and we will not leave forever.
President Abbas's spokesman further asserted that nothing will happen in the Gaza Strip without the explicit approval of the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, which is the umbrella organization of the Palestinian Authority.
We are not going to go into details. This is a Palestinian land. Without the approval of the PLO, nothing will happen, and we will not allow anybody to do anything without our approval and the consent of the Palestinian people.
It is important to know that since 2017, the Palestinian Authority essentially halted all payments for electricity and other basic services to the Gaza Strip, hoping to increase its leverage over the Islamist Hamas, which is regarded an enemy of the Palestinian Authority's ruling Fatah faction. Several months later, during a first visit by a senior Palestinian Authority official to the Gaza Strip since losing control of the territory, namely former Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah, the Islamist Hamas detonated an improvised explosive device next to the Premier's transiting convoy. Nevertheless, the assassination attempt failed, and the Palestinian Authority explicitly condemned and held Hamas responsible for the attack. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. It is important to highlight that TV7 Israel is a non-profit ministry with all of our productions exclusively reliant on the generosity of our viewers. Therefore, I would like to voice my appreciation for all of you who support our daily news updates, and note further that any donation helps us cover the costs of extensive research, production, and much more. Lastly, but certainly not least, I'd like to encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, salvation of Israel, as well as for the hostages in Gaza. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.